Right now, as you watch this, somewhere in the world, someone is probably checking their phone. Maybe it's a weather app, maybe a news alert popping up on their screen. A hurricane is brewing in the Atlantic, a typhoon forming in the Pacific. There are satellite images, projected paths, categories of wind speed, estimated rainfall. There are government warnings, evacuation routes, emergency shelters being prepared. People are stocking up on batteries, water, non perishable food. They might board up windows, secure loose items, or simply pack a bag and drive inland, away from the coast. Most of us, living in the modern world, have a certain level of confidence, a belief that we can prepare, that we can escape, that we can rebuild. We have a safety net woven from technology, infrastructure, and collective knowledge. But what if none of that existed? What if there were no meteorologists, no satellites, no concrete buildings, no cars, no roads leading to safety? What if the only shelter you had was a flimsy hut of branches and leaves, or perhaps a shallow cave you shared with predators? What if your entire world, your food, your water, your family depended on the land around you, a land about to be swallowed by an unimaginable force? For 99% of human history, this wasn't a hypothetical thought experiment. It was a terrifying, recurring reality. For our ancient ancestors, who lived along coastlines, rivers, and floodplains, the arrival of a major storm, a hurricane, or a monsoon was not merely an inconvenience. It was an existential threat. How did they survive? How did a species so physically vulnerable, without fur or claws, manage to endure nature's most destructive spectacles, time and time again, without being wiped out? Imagine standing on a prehistoric beach, the air growing heavy, eerily still. The usual sounds of the jungle or the crashing waves are muted, replaced by a low, guttural rumble on the horizon. The sky turns a bruised purple, then an angry charcoal gray. A sudden gust of wind, smelling of salt and damp earth, whips through the palm trees, tearing at their fronds. This isn't just a strong breeze. This is the breath of something ancient and furious. Your flimsy shelter, painstakingly built over days, groans under the first real assault, its frame twisting, its covering threatening to peel away. Rain begins, not as drops, but as solid sheets of water, instantly saturating everything, turning the ground to treacherous mud. The roar of the wind becomes a deafening shriek, a primal scream that drowns out your own thoughts. This wasn't just a bad day at the office. This was the world ending, not in fire, but in wind and water. A hurricane isn't a single event, it's a cascade of horrors. The wind itself, strong enough to snap ancient trees, could turn any loose object into a deadly projectile. A simple stone, a broken branch could become a lethal weapon. Then comes the rain, relentless and unending, turning familiar landscapes into raging rivers, washing away trails, contaminating fresh water sources, and making any form of travel impossible. And finally, the most terrifying element, the storm surge. A wall of water, driven by the storm's immense power, sweeping inland, obliterating everything in its path. Your camp, your tools, your precious fire, all gone in an instant, swallowed by the churning ocean. If you survived the initial onslaught, you were left in a drowned, devastated landscape with no food, no clean water, no shelter, and often no way to find your scattered group. Disease, starvation, and exposure would claim those the storm hadn't. The stakes were absolute. From an evolutionary perspective, humans were in many ways ill-equipped for such cataclysms. Unlike many other animals, we don't have thick hides or dense fur to protect us from the elements. Our bipedal stance, while incredible for long-distance travel and freeing our hands, makes us relatively unstable in high winds compared to a four-legged creature hunkering down. We lack the natural burrows of rodents, the powerful claws of bears to dig into earth, or the ability of birds to simply fly away from the approaching danger. Our hairless skin, a trade-off for efficient sweating and thermoregulation in hot climates, left us vulnerable to hypothermia in the cold, driving rain that often followed a major storm. Many animals instinctively seek high ground or dense cover, but their shelters are often built into the landscape itself. A bear's den, a badger's set, a bird's nest in the heart of a giant tree. These offer a level of resilience we simply don't possess naturally. Our strength wasn't in brute force or specialized physiological adaptations to extreme weather. Our evolutionary advantage lay in something far more abstract: our minds, our capacity for complex communication, and our unique ability to cooperate on a scale unmatched by almost any other species. While individual strength might fail, collective ingenuity might just offer a slim chance. But how did they translate that abstract advantage into concrete survival when the world around them was literally falling apart? The answer, it turns out, was breathtakingly sophisticated, yet utterly simple. They didn't fight the storm. They listened to it. They learned to read its intentions, to anticipate its wrath, and then they disappeared. Imagine a tribe elder, not with a smartphone or a weather app, but with a lifetime of watching the sky, feeling the wind shift, smelling the changing ocean. Their eyes were instruments, their skin a barometer. They were living, breathing weather stations, finely tuned to the subtle language of the natural world. They observed the specific, unusual direction of the wind days before, the sudden, eerie quiet of the birds, the frantic behavior of deer seeking higher ground, the peculiar way the clouds gathered on the horizon, not just dark, but menacing in a specific familiar pattern. This wasn't merely instinct, it was an applied science honed over millennia, encoded in their very culture, passed down from ancestor to child. They understood that the world itself was a vast, complex weather map, constantly updating, and they knew how to read its most minute, life-saving details. When these whispers grew louder, when the atmospheric pressure shifted subtly enough to affect their very senses, or when an elder, whose wisdom was etched onto their face, declared it so, the group moved. Not in panic, but with purpose. They possessed mental maps of their territory, not of roads and towns, but of elevation, natural windbreaks, flood zones, and, crucially, specific hurricane havens. These were often inland, higher ground, perhaps a sheltered valley, a deep, resilient cave system, or a dense, ancient forest where the intertwined branches of massive trees formed a living, breathing barrier against the wind's fury. This wasn't just running away, it was a strategic retreat to pre-identified tested sanctuaries, sometimes dozens of miles away. It required incredible coordination. Every member knew their role. The strongest would carry the heaviest loads, the nimble would scout, the elders would guide, the children would be protected, carried close, shielded by the bodies of their parents. This shared purpose, this collective will to survive, was their most formidable defense. But what if the storm arrived too quickly? What if they were caught exposed, with no time to reach their designated haven? This is where their unique evolutionary advantage truly shone, their capacity for complex social cohesion. When physical shelter was impossible, the group itself became the shelter. Imagine dozens of bodies huddled together, intertwined, a living, breathing mass against the wind and rain. The warmth of one person radiating to another, the sheer presence of others battling the psychological terror. A single individual in such conditions would quickly succumb to hypothermia, despair, or the raw physical force of the storm. But a tightly bound group, sharing body heat, offering comfort, forming a collective psychological and physical shield, that was their arc. Their survival depended not just on individual strength, but on the profound, visceral understanding that we are all we have. And the challenge didn't end when the winds died down. Survival wasn't just about weathering the initial onslaught. It was about the desolate, drowned world that emerged afterwards. Food sources gone, fresh water contaminated, familiar landmarks obliterated. How did they endure this landscape of ruin? Their foresight was staggering. They often had hidden caches, dried meat, preserved nuts, root vegetables, tools wrapped in waterproof leaves, stashed in dry, elevated spots known only to a few trusted individuals. These were not just random stashes, they were disaster preparedness kits, meticulously placed for such cataclysms. They also possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of the post-storm landscape, which routes would survive flooding, which animals would return first to the devastated areas, where rainwater would collect in depressions in the rock, providing clean drinking water. Their ability to envision a future devastated by disaster and prepare for it, sometimes years in advance, speaks to a level of cognitive complexity and long-term planning that truly sets them apart from almost every other species. But how was this immense vital knowledge passed down through the countless generations? Not in books, not in lectures. It was woven into the very fabric of their culture, through stories, myths, songs, and initiation rituals. The tale of the angry sky god who brought devastating winds, or the great flood that wiped out a lazy, unprepared tribe, wasn't just entertainment around a flickering fire. It was a mnemonic device, a vivid, unforgettable lesson. Children learned not just how to hunt or gather, but how to read the sky for the signs of the sky beast's wrath. They learned the safe routes, the locations of the hurricane havens, the plants that survive floods, the precise spots of the hidden caches. Every rumble of distant thunder, every unusual cloud formation, every change in the ocean's breath became a prompt for these ancient lessons. The collective memory of the group, embodied and passed down through generations, became their most powerful defense system. It was a profound, intuitive understanding that for all their ingenuity, they were part of nature, not separate from it. They adapted, they anticipated, they moved. They didn't conquer the storm. They survived by becoming one with the rhythm of a dangerous, unpredictable world. Yet, even with all this wisdom, all this foresight, all this cooperation, sometimes it wasn't enough. Sometimes the storm was too vast, too sudden, too relentless. Sometimes even the most astute observations and the most desperate preparations failed. What happened then when the storm won? Sometimes the storm did win. The sheer scale of destruction, the ferocity of the winds, the relentless deluge, it could be too much. For those communities caught directly in the path of an unprecedented hurricane, often there was no escape. Imagine the silence that would descend after the roaring chaos finally subsided. A silence not of peace, but of profound, aching absence, emerging from the shattered remnants of a temporary shelter or the damp darkness of a cave, to a world utterly unmade. The familiar landmarks gone, the forest stripped bare, the very ground transformed by floodwaters and debris, and worse, the silence of those who did not emerge. The loss of loved ones, of children, of elders whose minds held the accumulated wisdom of generations. This was not just physical destruction, but a wound to the very soul of the group, a tearing of the delicate social fabric. Each lost elder was a library burned, each lost child a future unwritten. The trauma, the grief, the sheer desolation must have been overwhelming. But even in the face of such catastrophic loss, the human story, remarkably, continued. Survivors, often scattered and few, would carry the indelible scars, both physical and psychological. These stories of unimaginable loss, of the terrible cost of underestimation, became the most potent lessons of all. They reinforced, with brutal clarity, the absolute necessity of vigilance, of shared knowledge, and of unwavering cooperation. Those who remained would often regroup, drawing strength from the sheer will to continue, to honor the fallen by ensuring the survival of the lineage. They would share what little they had, mourn together, and begin the arduous, heartbreaking task of rebuilding, often in a new, unfamiliar landscape. This wasn't merely about individual resilience, it was about the profound, almost spiritual commitment to the collective. The species had to endure, and perhaps, in our own complex, often overwhelming modern world, remembering their struggle offers a different kind of strength. When we witness communities today rallying in the aftermath of disaster, sharing resources, offering comfort, and embarking on the long road to recovery, we are seeing the ancient blueprint of human survival activate. The instinct to protect the group, to mend the breaks in the social fabric, to ensure the continuity of our shared story runs bone deep within us. It reminds us that for all our technological marvels, our most fundamental power still lies in our capacity for empathy, for collaboration, and for holding on to hope in the darkest of times. The lessons of the ancient world are not just about physical survival, they are about the enduring spirit of humanity. It's about recognizing our place in a powerful, often indifferent natural world, and understanding that our greatest strength lies not in conquering it, but in understanding it, respecting it, and adapting with it. It's about the knowledge passed from hand to hand, generation to generation, whispering across millennia, "We survive this. You can too." What ancient wisdom, we might ask, still echoes within us, waiting to guide us through the storms yet to come? If you're moved by the incredible ingenuity and resilience of our ancestors, and wish to explore more profound human stories, share your thoughts below and join our journey.